Shadow Hack. Chapter 841, Killing Intent Rises. A golden light blossomed from the hands of Rahu clan's patriarch, and the projection of a giant which could support both heaven and earth appeared behind him. The projection extended its hands at the same rate as the patriarch, and a powerful and firm presence filled the Colosseum. The devil beasts underneath sensed it and knelt on the ground one after another. When the descendants in the spectator stand took note of it, the image of a giant splitting heavens and earth covered their vision. The attack arrived before the patriarch himself. Li Yunmu looked at the flying patriarch of Rahu clan, and a similar image appeared in his eyes. Within it, he transformed into the heaven and earth which were about to be destroyed under the chop of the giant's hand. The next instant, however, he snapped back to reality and looked at the patriarch of Rahu clan closing in on him with his heart filled with vigilance. Sure enough, there was a large disparity between different gods. When the four great elders arrived, although only the elder from Rahu clan had attacked, his attack only relied on brute force. Yet the patriarch of Rahu clan had only used his two hands and unleashed such a mystical technique. Before his punch even hit, the seed of definite loss would already take roots in the heart of the enemy. After he merged with the projection behind his body, the patriarch of Rahu clan would have enough strength to even kill a god. "Old bastard, you really can do it," Li Yunmu mumbled. After understanding that he was the target of the mystical technique used by Rahu clan's patriarch, he was sure that the enemy wanted to kill him there. Instantly, the Rahu clan's patriarch merged with the projection. In a moment, his entire body began to glitter with bright light, like he was a golden image of a god. His hands passed through space, covering the distance between him and Li Yunmu, and the image of transparent punches containing a hint of gold appeared in the sky. Li Yunmu wasn't the least bit flustered by those punches and revealed a charming smile. His body turned into a blur to evade them and stopped in the air to the left. He used his hands to form a sign in front of his chest, and the surrounding energy of the world quickly flew toward him as if it was being summoned. Once the natural energy gathered, it was in the form of smoke, then it quickly congealed into a round shape and leapt into Li Yunmu's hands. He threw the compacted world energy which had a spherical shape, and it instantly ruptured, turning into countless rays of small swords. They filled the entire sky and flew in all directions without obvious target. "Go!" With one command, the countless sword rays flew at the four patriarchs like charging soldiers. When the Rahu clan's patriarch saw the speed at which Li Yunmu dodged, a hint of astonishment appeared in his eyes. Chen-Chiu had become a god just recently, and it was due Godfather using a large amount of power of belief to raise his cultivation. This type of advancement was simply too hasty. Although his cultivation advanced, his soul should not have been strong enough to wield it. It should have been especially so for someone like Chen-Chiu who had become a god all of a sudden. His soul strength should have remained at the level of his original cultivation. This means that although he possessed the strength of a god, the strength of his soul was equivalent to that of an initial stage sage flux expert. The mystical technique which Rahu clan's patriarch had used first sowed the seed of certain loss in the heart of the enemy. Then, when his attack reached, the enemy would already be under the control of his trick. If this mystical technique was used in front of the other three patriarchs whose strength was not far from him, it would naturally not be too effective. But when dealing with someone like Chen-Chiu who had recently become a god, it should have been enough to get rid of him. But the reality was that Li Yunmu was not influenced by the mystical technique and turned into a blur to easily evade it. Godfather has certainly bestowed him with a cultivation method, the patriarch of Rahu clan mumbled with a hint of killing intent in his eyes. The people of Asura city attached a lot of importance to their bloodline, and their fighting skills and techniques were based on the ability of their bloodline. Because of this malpractice, although the strength of Asura city's people was very formidable, there wasn't much variation in their skills, which allowed their enemies to easily discover a flaw in their techniques. Previously, Asura had discussed with the other 6 ancient gods this problem and had created divine techniques for his people by fusing the divine techniques of the other 6 gods. Afterwards, he bestowed them to the 4 great clans. Those divine techniques were considered as supreme treasures by the four great clans, and unless one was a direct descendant, they could not inherit them. The branch family descendants could only cultivate the cultivation methods of the clan. So if Chen-Chiu was not bestowed a cultivation method by Godfather, how could he unleash a divine technique? Rahu clan's patriarch looked at the sword rays charging at them and waved his enormous hands outwards, transforming them into giant palms to crush the sword rays. The moment the two collided, that sword rays ruptured. At the center of Rahu clan's patriarch's palms, minor wounds appeared. He looked at them healing slowly, and his mind wandered. The technique Chen-Chiu unleashed with the cultivation of an initial stage god was capable of injuring 4 late-stage gods, so how formidable was it? In the sky, the other patriarchs looked at the sword rays in disdain and used their physical bodies to resist them. All 3 of them withstood them, but small wounds littered their bodies. You 4 great clans want to rebel. You actually dare to attack an ancestor. I will report this matter to Godfather. Li Yunmu looked at the 4 clan patriarchs who were incredibly astonished, and a smile appeared on his face. The patriarchs of the 4 great clans glanced at each other, and it was enough for them to agree on a plan. Previously, in the Great Hall of Moro clan, Jiaoxiu had called the other 3 clan patriarchs for a secret meeting to tell them about the information provided by the city lord. It was about how he had been concealing power of belief stolen over many years instead of using it to raise his cultivation to ancient god realm. The ancestors of the 4 great clans had used their share of power of belief to raise their cultivation from peak god to ancient god, so when Asura descended from the divine palace, only the clan patriarchs of the 4 great clans and the city lord had come to greet him. The 4 ancestors pretended to be in seclusion and did not go out to meet him. Why? Because the 4 ancestors had already used the stolen power of belief to become ancient gods. The moment they appeared, Godfather would sense them. If the 4 ancestors joined hands to attack Godfather, they could naturally do it, but Godfather had existed for a very long time. He had obtained an indescribable amount of power of belief and possessed an unknown level of strength. Due to that, the 4 ancestors did not dare to be certain of their victory and continued hiding. They did not show up for anything at all. In the meeting among the clan patriarchs, Jiaoxiu spoke about the apprehensions of the city lord. After all, a branch family descendant has been rewarded by Godfather. He was turned into a god and even became Godfather's adopted son. And if that was not enough, he was even bestowed with a divine technique. All those things clearly illustrated that Godfather had sensed something and wanted to support the creation of a new power in Asura city. If Chen-Chiu did not die, the stealing of power of belief by the 4 great clans would be exposed sooner or later. At the instant the eyes of the 4 patriarchs met, they clearly understood what the other was thinking. Chen-Chiu could not leave this Colosseum alive. Jiaoxiu sighed, somewhat hesitant in his heart over whether going against Godfather so openly was good or bad. But at that moment, he could not be bothered to think much. His body shuddered, and another him appeared behind him. The matriarch of Deva clan smiled at Li Yunmu. Her smile was filled with the sound of little bells and her impressive figure turning and posing. With the entire world as an arena, she left an afterimage with each step. A gloomy smile appeared on the face of Patriarch of Doro clan. He extended his 6 arms to produce seals that would unleash his divine technique. Chapter 842, Godfather intervenes. The Patriarch of Rahu clan looked at Li Yunmu, but did not join the other 3 patriarchs to attack him. 3 clan patriarchs were already sufficient to deal with Chen-Chiu, who was an initial stage god. He was only responsible for finishing and beheading Chen-Chiu in close quarters battle. Li Yunmu's expression did not change, and the Patriarch of Rahu clan coldly laughed before flying down at the arena. In a breath's time, he was already standing by the side of the 3 young masters and saw that none of the previous arrogance remained in their gazes. They were too numb for anything right then. Lord Father, you finally came. If you hadn't come, your treasured son would have been killed here. If you were the slightest bit slower, I would have died here. Luo Tian looked at Rahu clan's patriarch with apathy in his eyes. There was almost no life in him. He only managed to reply in a quivering voice because of his fear for death. Neither he nor the other young masters were afraid of their cultivation being sealed, and the wounds from the beasts that they got during battle did not ache. Only Chen Qiu's insistence on getting them killed in the Colosseum terrified them. The three young masters who had been pampered from childhood never thought that they could die. All of them had thought that regardless of however the situation changed in the future, the position of clan patriarch would be theirs. Dominguez's pale and originally tensed complexion also collapsed after hearing Luo Tian's words, and all 12's eyes on his 6 hands began to shed tears. The luxurious dress on Jasmine's body was in tatters, revealing her white skin as well as some places which were infected by poison. She seemed to be a completely different person and could not even weep. Each and every one of you is useless. You, the young masters of 4 great clans, have become like this after going through a little bit of hardship. You must recall your identities and act accordingly in front of me. This time's accident can be considered as a lesson about the importance of strength. After losing the fight over obtaining ancient god Lakshmi's soul, your cultivation had still stayed at the 9th level of Great Flux Expert Realm. The patriarch of Rahu clan revealed disappointment for the 3 young masters being unable to meet his expectations and spoke in a heavy tone. The 3 young masters heard him clear and well, but did not dare to retort. They did not take his words to heart either, however. If anyone else had been in their place, the result would still be the same. If the opponent was ordinary, they wouldn't have fallen to such desperate straits, but in front of a god, how could 3 9-level Great Flux experts resist? Even if they were Sage Flux experts, they still wouldn't have been able to resist. The expressions of the 3 recovered to normal, and 3 strands of divine energy left the hand of Rahu clan's patriarch to unseal their cultivation. In an instant, their cultivation base recovered, and a sense of security returned to the hearts of the 3 young masters. After that, the patriarch of Rahu clan turned toward the 4 great elders who were kneeling on the ground and coldly snorted before unsealing their cultivation too. 4 divine presences erupted, and each and every one of the devil beasts kneeling on the ground began to shiver. A group of bastards, the patriarch of Rahu clan said, and his hand enlarged to press on the arena. Dust flew everywhere, and the entire Colosseum filled with miserable wails and random patches of blood. After killing the 30 beasts with one fist, the patriarch of Rahu clan turned his gaze toward the battle in the sky. The 3 late-stage god patriarchs were filled with killing intent, and each of them used their most powerful abilities to attack Chen Qiu. In just a moment, the sky filled with all sorts of lights, which looked extremely beautiful. Under the radiance, a line of blood flowed out of the corner of Li Yunmu's mouth. His clothes were completely destroyed, revealing multiple wounds on his naked skin. The 3 clan patriarchs attacked him again, but he used the wind under his feet to unleash heavenly insect step and immediately transformed into a blur, completely disappearing and then appearing at another position. He can still run around, the patriarch of Rahu clan mumbled. He stamped his left foot on the ground and soared upwards, transforming into a blur that rushed toward Li Yunmu. In just a few breaths, the patriarch of Rahu clan appeared in front of Li Yunmu with a cold smile on his face and began to fight with him. The punch from his enormous fist charged at Li Yunmu so fast that the people underneath could only see an after-image. Li Yunmu constantly retreated under the attacks, which made it clear that he was the weaker side. The 4 patriarchs wanted to kill him, so Asura in the city lord's mansion had to come quickly. After all, if the fight was allowed to continue any longer, he would not be able to preserve his disguise. Under the attack of 4 late-stage gods, an initial stage god like him could resist for a while but had to chance to escape alive. Relying on his heavenly insect step, Li Yunmu constantly dodged the attacks of Rahu clan's patriarch and continuously averted disasters. The 3 clan patriarchs standing on the side watched it with a frown. Jiao Xiu looked in the direction of the upper city with a restless feeling. He then turned to the other 2 clan patriarchs and said, "We don't have much time. We should attack together and kill him. Only victory is permitted here." After hearing his words, the other clan patriarchs used their most formidable techniques to attack Li Yunmu and their divine energy to restrict the space in which he could move. The descendants sitting in the spectator stand watched the battle in the sky with envy on their faces. The fights between gods showed off great power and countless divine techniques. In their hearts, becoming a god was the final point of their cultivation. Among those people, however, there was a group of branch family descendants with a strange expression on their face. On some faces, it has disappointment mixed in within it. Although the branch family descendants were deeply afraid of Li Yunmu, but after all was said and done, Chen Qiu was also a minor branch family descendant previously. His sudden rise brought hope to them. If they really had some ability, their position or bloodline might not be a problem. Yet right then, Chen Qiu's death was almost certain under the joint attack of the patriarch of 4 great clans, and with that, his legend would disappear. Because of that, the hope rising in the hearts of branch family descendants began to collapse. The 4 patriarchs attacked with their full strength. They used a large amount of divine energy to unleash a formidable divine technique to imprison Li Yunmu in a small space. It turned the situation hopeless. If Li Yunmu did not reveal his true strength, he would die under the assault of the 4 great clan patriarchs. The branch family descendants clenched their fists, feeling extremely nervous for that last bit of hope in their heart. Not everyone was like that though. Excitement was on the faces of the 3 young masters and 4 great elders in the Colosseum. All of them wished that they could kill Chen Qiu themselves. Only when he died would the shadow in their heart disappear. Just when a multicolored divine technique was about to hit Li Yunmu's body, the entire space became extremely heavy as if it was a marsh. All the living creatures slowed down, and even the divine technique which was about to hit Li Yunmu became extremely slow, proceeding at a snail's pace. Upon seeing that, Li Yunmu heaved a sigh of relief. Asura finally intervened. Suspicion appeared on the faces of descendants as well as the 3 young masters in the battle stage. They did not know what exactly was happening. In the sky, the 4 clan patriarchs sensed the change in space and sighed faintly. Given that they had become gods a long time ago, they clearly understood that the change meant that Godfather has taken action. Sure enough, Godfather was thinking the same as them and wanted to deal with the 4 ancestors and even the 4 great clans. His intervention signified that he was watching the transformation of Asura city. Chapter 843, Private Discussion. The denseness made it feel like the gravity had been increased countless times and like even time had slowed down. A figure appeared in front of the 4 patriarchs in space, waved its hand, and the 4 patriarchs were thrown down into the arena like kites whose strings were cut. One after another, 4 figures crashed into the ground with a loud noise like bullets. Immediately after that, the figure moved his hand, and the divine techniques advancing toward Li Yunmu disappeared as if they had never existed. After that, the entire place recovered its original appearance and the audience no longer felt powerless as if they were caught in a marsh. Under the bright sunshine, the figure became clear. It had 3 heads and 6 arms, wore a white gown, and had delicate skin like a 20-year-old. Li Yunmu looked at him and slightly bent down in the air. "I pay my respects to Godfather." When the descendants in the spectator stand saw Asura, excitement immediately appeared on their faces. They immediately stood up from their chairs and knelt on the ground with their foreheads directly touching the ground. A bright and clear noise resounded in the entire Colosseum. Paying respects to Godfather. In the arena, fear appeared on the faces of the 3 young masters and 4 great elders who also knelt down to pay their respects. The 4 clan patriarchs crawled out of the pit with pale faces and also paid their respects with a line of blood coming out of the corner of their mouth. Asura expressionlessly looked at the 4 great elders and softly said, "All of you, rise." Li Yunmu stood up and spat out a mouthful of blood with few coughs and a pale complexion. The descendants in the spectator stand stood up straight and excitedly looked at Asura. The direct and branch family descendants of the 4 great clans had only seen the golden idol of Asura during the ceremonies in their clans. As for the person himself, they had never seen him. Upon seeing the Asura clan's ancestor, they were naturally very excited. The expressions of the 3 young masters and 4 elders, however, turned unsightly, and they began to panic. It was especially so for the 4 clan patriarchs. They hadn't expected such a turn of events in the least. Why would Godfather rescue Chen Qiu in such a timely fashion? It was as if Godfather had been paying attention to the situation in the Colosseum since the start. In their estimations, Chen Qiu should have died in another breath's time. But the change in the situation was also good, since it showed that Godfather valued Chen Qiu a lot more than he should. The 4 elders understood the meaning behind it clearly in their heart. Soon, they would have to receive punishment for attacking an ancestor. If Chen Qiu had died just a moment ago, then even if Godfather was furious, he would not dare to do anything in front of the 4 ancient god ancestors. Chen Qiu had not died, however, so the 4 great elders would receive punishment, but they were unwilling and unresigned toward it. Ashen, come see me at the city lord's mansion. But the scenario the clan patriarchs imagined did not happen. Asura did not pay any attention to them and just looked around the Colosseum once before his figure disappeared from the sky. Li Yunmu glanced at the 4 patriarchs in the Colosseum, then turned around and flew toward Brunhilde. I will go to city lord's mansion. You go find Rat and old bastard and wait for me in the room in the 4-story building, he told her in a whisper. Brunhilde nodded, but her eyebrows creased, revealing a hint of hesitation. Be extremely careful. If Asura discovers something, attack him even if it means revealing your identity. I will sense your presence and immediately join you. Li Yunmu nodded, then soared into the sky and flew toward the upper city. All the disciples in the spectator stand looked at each other, not understanding the situation. The branch family descendants heaved a sigh of relief, then rushed out of Colosseum in high spirits. The 3 young masters and 4 great elders on the stage also heaved sighs of relief. When Asura had appeared just a moment ago, they felt truly afraid that they would receive the punishment. There were also a few people worried in the arena. They were the 4 clan patriarchs. Asura had left without saying anything after rescuing Chen Qiu. There was no condemnation or punishment, which was a complete change in attitude from what everyone expected. It made the patriarchs of the 4 clans hesitate. If it was said that Asura attacking to subdue the 4 of them just then was the whole of their punishment, none of them would believe it. What should we do now? Rahu clan's patriarch asked with suspicion in his voice. Jiao Xiu frowned, then snorted coldly and looked at the other 3 patriarchs. What can we do other than hurrying to find our clan ancestors for guidance? If Godfather really wants to attack our 4 great clans, we cannot sit still and wait. After the conversation, the 4 clan patriarchs turned into a blur and soared into the sky, quickly flying toward their respective clans. Li Yunmu walked toward the city lord's mansion at a slow pace. The large gate, which was usually shut tightly, was wide open right then. 2 rows of maids were kneeling orderly on the ground and said in unison, paying respects to ancestor. "N, get up." Li Yunmu waved his hand and entered the mansion. Although he had never come to the mansion before, he could sense the source of the most powerful presence in the mansion and knew where Asura was. He walked there and entered a small room on the 2nd floor. Once inside, he saw Ashbai kneeling on the ground with his body slightly shuddering. Asura was lazily lying on his leather chair while holding a glass of wine in his hand. The wine glass contained spirit wine and emitted a sweet fragrance which filled the entire room. "I pay my respects to Godfather." Li Yunmu walked to Ashbai's side and gave a customary salute. "N." While sitting on his leather chair, Asura replied in one word. His forearms above the shoulder were holding his hair and interweaving groups of them into a small braid. After a moment, the scattered long hair was arranged into a perfect braid. When Li Yunmu took note of it, the feeling given off by Asura once he changed his hairstyle became different. His whole entire presence seemed to transform. Previously, his long hair were only tied with a golden ring, which made Asura look like a direct descendant of the 4 great clans. He was beautiful with a hint of languidness. But after he changed his hairstyle despite wearing the same silk cloth, a sort of vicious temperament was added to him. I am not very happy about today's matter. Asura looked at Li Yunmu with his mirror-like eyes. Li Yunmu inwardly mused that if Asura was truly not happy, he would not have taken action. The events at the Colosseum allowed Li Yunmu to guess Asura's thoughts. The only thing Asura was still in the dark about right then was whether the ancestors of the four great clans had become ancient gods or not. If he knew, he probably would have taken action long ago. Li Yunmu looked at Asura with a calm expression and replied without any nervousness. Godfather, I wasn't in the wrong in today's matter. Oh? With the great war about to happen in the near future, the four great clans of Asura city have been thrown in a mess by you. But you still think you aren't in the wrong? Today, if I hadn't rushed over to the Colosseum on time, you would have been dead with your soul scattered. Asura's tone was completely calm, without any hint of anger or discontent. Li Yunmu stood completely straight and said with a hint of a smile on his face, the matter in the Colosseum happened solely because the three young masters insisted on provoking me. As the ancestor of Asura city, I naturally couldn't let such a humiliation go unpunished. Chapter 844, A Trip to the Four Great Clans. After hearing Li Yunmu's explanation, Asura nodded in approval. He then took a gulp of the spirit wine and savored the taste for a moment before speaking up again. In Asura city, rules are the most important. Regardless of whether someone is the clan patriarch or one of the three young masters, they have to respectfully bow and salute you. But your method for punishing those youngsters was excessively ruthless, completely not suitable to your status. Li Yunmu burst out laughing after hearing Asura's words, while Ashbai kneeling nearby was like a bird startled by the mere twang of a bow, and his body shuddered from top to bottom. Godfather, your words are wrong. No one cares about the methods in a place where rules are supreme and social hierarchy is respected. As long as you are sufficiently formidable, anything you say becomes the rule. Even if the three young masters are weak and not my opponents, they are still the young masters of the four great clans and not the residents of Lower City. Ashbai, who was still kneeling on the ground, snapped out of his fright and returned to reality. Li Yunmu's laugh had made him feel for an instant that Godfather might really attack and obliterate him. Fortunately, Godfather did not attack, so there was still an opportunity. Ashbai lowered his head and rolled his eyes at Li Yunmu's words. His mouth was really ferocious. You speak correctly, strength is indeed the most important. As long as you have sufficient strength, every word you say will become a rule. Those who are serving others must follow the instructions, otherwise only death will await them. When the three young masters attacked you, you were able to punish them. But when the patriarchs of the four great clans came personally, why did you not change your position? After all, they were late-stage gods and could easily kill you while still having strength to spare, Asura inquired with his eyes fixed upon Li Yunmu to hear his reply. The patriarchs of the four great clans were late-stage gods, so I naturally couldn't resist in front of them. But even if they were late-stage gods and the patriarchs of the four clans, they still must be punished for attacking an ancestor. I was personally adopted by Godfather and was burdened by this incredible honor. If I had lowered my head toward the patriarchs of the four clans, that would be losing face for your distinguished self, Li Yunmu said without any change in his expression. His words, however, were clearly meant to curry favor with Asura. After he finished speaking, a smile blossomed on Asura's face. Moreover, I dared to fight with the four clan patriarchs because I was not afraid. Since Godfather bestowed the title of ancestor upon me, I must defend it, or your face will certainly cease to exist. Furthermore, the information given by me to Godfather was not that highly valuable. The reason why you raised my cultivation from initial stage Sage Flux expert to God Realm is probably because of my boldness. And the matter of you adopting me as your son is certainly more complex than what I might understand. Ashbai, who was still kneeling on the ground, felt a lingering fear in his heart. Anyone with a brain could see that it was where they would be completely exposed. Asura might have already discovered the matter of stolen power of belief. How could a branch family descendant have such a profound scheming mind that he could even anticipate the thoughts in Asura's mind? If it had been any other branch family descendant, they would have been lost in excitement after obtaining the cultivation base of a god and the position of ancestor that they would have no time to think of such things. Tell me then, what are my thoughts? Asura sat up straight on the leather chair as if he was about to hear something interesting. When I was leaving, Godfather told me that I can do anything I want to do. As the branch family descendant of Moro clan, I was accused wrongly in the matter of young master's death and was pursued to the city lord's mansion by the subordinate of clan patriarch. So after I obtained the cultivation base of God and the position of ancestor, the first thing I did was to return to Moro clan and cause havoc, Li Yunmu said with confidence. Given Godfather's identity, countless descendants with great aptitude and even purer bloodline would come running to hug your thigh. Among them, you could have chosen a more suitable candidate for an ancestor, but you chose me, so you naturally have to have some other aim. Everything is related to the four great clans, so I guess that Godfather wanted to use me as chess piece to create a disturbance. The four hands on Asura's back began to clap after he heard Li Yunmu's words, and the wine glass in one of his hands began to sway fiercely. He smiled and looked at Li Yunmu with a scorching fire in his eyes as if he had encountered an unpolished gem. After a long time, he excitedly said, "Intelligent people like you rarely appear in Asura city. You are far more clever than the others. I wanted to use you as a chess piece to control the four great clans, but I hadn't expected that an intelligent person like you would guess this matter. Although you acted in great haste regarding the matter of Colosseum, it allowed me to see the intentions of the four great clans. They are ready to do anything to obtain the power of belief. Those four children, whether for good or bad, I am still their godfather. Even if I didn't give them power of belief, it should be fine." While speaking, Asura's tone became gloomy and cold, and from time to time, a presence like that of heaven erupted from his body. The temperature in the room dropped. That drop in temperature was not something to be concerned about for gods, but Ashbai, still kneeling on the ground, was shuddering from head to toe while Asura spoke. With each word, his trembling became worse. "You tell me, Ashbai. When I was at the Divine Palace, I had no intention to bother about this power of belief and gave all authority to manage Asura city to you and the four great clans. But when I descended this time, I discovered that the amount of power of belief was too small. A portion of it had been stolen. You five wanted to advance your cultivation, and I can understand your thinking, but you were overly hasty. If the things were different, I would have bestowed power of belief to you all to strengthen your cultivation myself. But you acted on your own, which makes me very bitter. The sons who were personally created by me, should I kill you all or not?" After saying that, Asura reclined on the leather chair with his eyes looking at Ashbai trembling on the ground. His voice was completely calm, as if killing a son was a completely ordinary matter. "I made a mistake, I was wrong. Godfather, I couldn't control myself and colluded with the four great clans. All the power of belief stolen over the years has been concealed by me without using even a single bit from it. I request Godfather to forgive me. I know my mistake, but I don't want to die. I request Godfather to give me one final chance," Ashbai pleaded in a broken voice. He was clear that Godfather was a ruthless and decisive existence who really could kill him. That was why he did not dare to scheme at this time and begged for his life while all the plots and excuses in his mind turned into fleeting clouds. "I will settle your debt after returning. Right now, I want to take a trip to the four great clans with my sixth son and see how much my four children have advanced by relying on the stolen power of belief." After saying that, Asura stood up and arrived at Li Yunmu's side in a wink. He placed his hand on Li Yunmu's shoulder, and the next instant, the two of them disappeared from the room. Chapter 845, Four Ancient Gods. After Jiaoxiu returned from the Colosseum, he went through the main hall's gate. After entering, he closed the large gate and walked to the chair at the main seat. He sat down on it and pressed a deeply concealed push button under the chair. Instantly, a hole appeared under the main seat and Xiaoxiu began to fall down with the chair. He fell through a passage that seemed endless. Only after a long time had passed did a bright light come from underneath and the chair smashed into pieces. Xiaoxiu slowly floated down after it. The place which he had reached was a completely sealed cave. At the top of it, countless night pearls were embedded. A gate created from black metal was in front of Xiaoxiu. There were 2 small peacock lamps in front of it. The cave, which was the destination of the secret pathway through the main hall, was the region where the ancestor of Moro clan was in seclusion. Only sufficient distance and the large door created from black metal could obstruct the ancient god presence from emitting out. Xiaoxiu half knelt on the ground and said to the closed large door, "Ancestor, Godfather has sensed something." There was no reply from behind the large door at first. After a moment though, the thick black metal door opened, and a presence which was much more formidable than that of a god erupted. "Come in," an aged voice called out. Xiaoxiu stood up and went through the large door. After entering, he saw another, smaller cave. The inside of it was illuminated by night pearls like the outside. There was only a stone bed in the cave and a petite man lying on it. He wore a sackcloth and looked very ordinary. When he heard the sound of footsteps, he stood up from the stone bed, revealing his delicate face and white skin like that of an 18 or 19-year-old. He seemed to be in his youth, his appearance only slightly different from that of Asura. "Speak, what has Godfather discovered?" A voice, inconsistent with his age, spoke from the youth's mouth. It belonged to an old man who had seen all aspects of life and society. Xiaoxiu glanced at the ancestor sitting on the stone bed and sensed the ancient god presence emitted from his body that had become even more powerful. It brought a sense of security appeared, and he narrated things as they stood. "A branch family descendant from my clan was adopted as the 6th son by Godfather. He raised that branch family descendant's cultivation to that of a god, and later when I went to City Lord's mansion to inquire with Lord Ashby, Lord told me." "Told you what?" the Moro clan's ancestor asked with a frown when Xiaoxiu stopped speaking. "He told me that the reason why Godfather raised the cultivation of that branch family descendant and bestowed the position of ancestor to him is to keep our 4 clans in check. Lord Ashby also said that Godfather has only done this because he is resentful about the matter of stolen power of belief. He did this to show the 4 great clans that anything he has given, he can take it back." After Xiaoxiu finished speaking, he saw that the ancestor was frowning, and felt somewhat panicked in his heart. But he could not understand why the 4 ancestors were afraid of Godfather. After all, they had already become ancient gods by relying on the stolen power of belief. Regardless of how formidable Godfather was, he was still an ancient god. Given their higher numbers, they should be able to make Godfather fear them. Then why did the 4 ancestors go into hiding when Godfather descended and refused to come out? Moro clan's ancestor sunk into deep contemplation, then asked, "Anything else happened?" "Yes." Xiaoxiu took a deep breath and nervousness appeared on his face. That 6th ancestor sealed the cultivations of 3 young masters and 4 great elders before throwing them into the Colosseum as fighters. He even used his divine energy to raise the cultivation of the vicious beasts to devil beasts to kill them. Because of that, we were forced to attack that 6th ancestor with an intent to kill. But unfortunately, at the last moment, Godfather appeared, right? Without waiting for Xiaoxiu to finish, Moro clan's ancestor opened his mouth. After saying that, he suddenly smiled and turned the topic to Chenqiu. 6th brother recognized by Godfather is very clever, his methods and schemes are extremely profound. When Xiaoxiu saw that ancestor did not blame them, he heaved a sigh of relief inwardly. Then he immediately asked a question which had been bugging him from the start, "Ancestor, since Godfather has already sensed what's happened, why don't our 4 great clans launch a joint counter-attack? If the 4 ancestors join hands, Godfather will certainly have to fear us." "Join hands?" Moro clan's ancestor mumbled. If we could have dealt with Godfather by joining hands, then we would have done so long ago and wouldn't have to hide underground, passing our days without seeing sunlight. The instant Godfather descended, we sensed that we aren't his opponent. We thought that Godfather hadn't sensed us, but alas, Moro clan's ancestor explained with a smile. He then formed a semicircle in the air with his hand, and a pure white pearl appeared above it. The instant it appeared, Xiao Xiu sensed that it was power of belief. When he realized that, he took a deep breath and a fire appeared in his eyes. Every living creature generated power of belief. After a large amount of it was gathered, it would take the form of strands. After those strands of power of belief were gathered, they would solidify into a ball of light. Usually the 4 clans would receive power of belief in terms of balls of light from the city lord's mansion. It was the most standard type of power of belief. The power of belief in Ancestor's hand had already taken the shape of a pearl, which meant that countless balls of power of belief were gathered within it. Xiao Xiu did not know how much would one be able to rise in strength after using it. Xiao Xiu snapped back to reality soon, and his complexion turned pale. He anxiously said, "You cannot, Ancestor. Once this power of belief enters your body, I fear that Godfather will immediately sense it. He has sensed me long ago. If he hadn't, he wouldn't have adopted a branch family descendant as a 6th brother. If I don't absorb it now, then what's the use of this power of belief?" The ancestor of Moro clan swallowed the power of belief. The next instant, a faint light spread out from his abdomen, and soon, his whole body was surrounded by the power of belief. The presence of an ancient god erupted from his body and smashed open the black metal gate which was capable of hiding presence. The ancient god presence gradually began to boil like a pot of water on the stove. When Moro clan's ancestor began to refine the power of belief condensed into a pearl, the unstable ancient god presence instantly erupted forth and smashed through the stone wall above him, going all the way up to the mansion. All the elders and descendants of the Moro clan saw it, and excitement appeared on their faces. All of Asura city could sense that ancient god presence. A moment later, similar ancient god presences soared into the heavens from the other 3 clans. They were all open and without restraint. When Ashby kneeling in the city lord's mansion sensed that ancient god presence, his expression turned ugly, and he fell on the ground paralyzed. What's the benefit of declaring war on Godfather? It is certain death. You 4, you are just courting death. Outside the Moro clan, Asura wearing a white gown raised his head and looked at the sky. He smiled after sensing the wild presences. Couldn't wait to revolt. Chapter 846, Everyone's Thoughts. In the Moro clan, the descendants woke up from their cultivation after sensing the ancient god presence and walked out of their rooms while looking at the sky above the clan residence. After that, they formed a circle and began to discuss it. Our Moro clan also has an ancient god. It is definitely Lord Ancestor. Only Lord Ancestor was a peak-level god. Since he has become an ancient god, it has to be said that our Moro clan has gained an advantage over the other clans. The other 3 clans will be slightly suppressed by us. Now that the ancestor has become an ancient god, he will be following in Godfather's footsteps. Asura clan will have 2 ancestors, and the division of power of belief will also change. Perhaps Moro clan will be able to obtain even more power of belief, and the number of gods in our clan will also increase. One after another, the descendants commented on what they saw until their cheeks became slightly red from the excitement. While they were talking, another 3 ancient god presences erupted from the other 3 clans. Upon noticing them, he descendants, who were all smiling, were startled and stayed rooted to the spot for a long time. Despite how much time went by, however, they could still sense the existence of 3 other presences, and astonishment appeared on their faces. 4 ancient gods. My god, Asura clan's 4 ancestors have become ancient gods, which leaves only city lord Ashby behind. If he also becomes an ancient god, then Godfather's 5 sons will all be ancient gods. Asura clan will have 6 ancient gods, so won't the entire Lanlu's power of belief will belong to our Asura city. Once those words were spoken, the expressions of the descendants changed one after another, and excitement appeared on their faces. If all of Lanlu's power of belief was obtained by Asura city, then even branch family descendants would obtain enough power of belief to become gods. All the descendants gathered in one corner of Moro clan. After sensing the four ancient god presences, they began to dream about the power of belief which they would obtain in the future. In another place, however, in a room in the depths of the clan residence, god presences erupted one after another after sensing the ancient god presence, and many sighs echoed in the darkness. Ancestor has done it in the end. Is it really a good idea to fight against Godfather? He created the whole of Asura race, and all the ancestors are his sons. Rebelling so openly if their strengths are equally matched, then it is good. But if the ancestors aren't his enemy? Since Ancestor has already done it, we naturally will stand behind Gun. With the Great War in sight, perhaps Godfather will be excited by the fact that the number of ancient gods under him has increased. The gods of Elder Council instantly divided into two factions and argued intensely. Outside the Moro clan's main gate, Li Yunmu looked at the four ancient presences soaring into the sky without any expression. His heart was as clear as a mirror. Asura had already attained the realm of quasi-master god, so how could the four newly advanced ancient gods deal with him? The difference between their strength was like a gorge that couldn't be crossed. They could not fight someone above their realm without any trump cards. Moreover, not everyone had an opportunity like him and got to encounter the incarnate of true God, the system. And after Asura became a quasi-master god, even Li Yunmu himself would have to consider whether to fight him or not. After all, his cultivation was stuck in God realm, even if he could fight against the master gods by using demonic energy. If being completely honest, his strength was also comparable to that of a quasi-master god, so he was evenly matched with Asura. Let's go to see my third son, Ashmo. A slight smile appeared on Asura's face, and he walked up the flight of stairs. The tightly shut large gate was instantly opened by formidable divine presence. The guards sitting at the entrance stood up and looked at Li Yunmu and Asura and were instantly stunned. The next instant, they knelt down on the ground and respectfully said, "Greetings Godfather, Ancestor." Asura nodded, then waved his hand to indicate for the guards to stand up and walk toward the main hall. On the path, they encountered several scattered descendants and attendants, all of whom knelt down on the ground to pay their greetings. After the two of them left into the distance, the descendants slowly stood up and smiled widely. Sure enough, it was the ancestor who became an ancient god just now. So Godfather has come. It is the first time that Godfather has come to our Moro clan. Seems like the division of power of belief is really going to change. After all, the Asura clan will now have 5 ancient gods. I hadn't expected that even we branch family descendants would be able to obtain power of belief. When Li Yunmu heard the discussions of the descendants, he gave an indescribable smile. Those young people were really naive, they really thought that their ancestor advancing to ancient god realm was a good thing. If Asura hadn't discovered that some of the power of belief was missing, the 4 ancestors would not have revealed themselves. The power of belief was extremely important, so how could Asura possibly divide it for lower status people? Asura turned around to look at Li Yunmu and asked with a smile, "What are you laughing at?" "I am laughing at those descendants full of impossible dreams. Now that the 4 elder brothers have openly revealed their ancient god presence in order to declare war upon your distinguished self, I fear that the days of the 4 great clans won't be easy," Li Yunmu said with a smile and a hint of excitement in his voice. "Fight, all of you keep fighting." After they all used up their strength, he would be the one to obtain the benefits. He would be able to go to the divine palace and obtain the heavenly grand ritual without much trouble, which was precisely his plan. The descendants naturally don't think much and only feel that their ancestor advancing to ancient god is a good thing. Those in the Elder Council are somewhat different, they can think more. But their thinking also isn't comprehension. "Even my 4 sons are like that and don't think much," Asura said calmly. They can only blame themselves for being too hasty. Why did they attempt to do such a thing without full confidence? Who wouldn't want to reach their level? They raised their head and looked at the divine palace and ancient god realm, but they didn't take my strength in consideration and acted hastily. They are clearly my sons, but why don't they show a little bit of intelligence? When Master God was present, I concealed myself carefully and never displayed the slightest thought to exceed my position, Asura said. When Li Yunmu heard about that, he began to panic a bit. No wonder then that the true God had tried to ban the power of belief. It had both merits and demerits. It could increase one's strength, but when all was said and done, the amount of power of belief was limited, so gods would naturally have to fight for it. Progressing further in such an abnormal state was not the correct path. The genuine correct path allowed the person of every realm to advance slowly and increase their strength step by step. The intention of eradicating the power of belief became even stronger in Li Yunmu's heart then. If he didn't do so, the origin world would remain stuck in the rut, which would turn out to be extremely dangerous in the future. Even the system which was previously the true God had been forced to escape to the origin world, so there clearly were even more dangerous things lurking outside. If the strength of the origin world did not change, then facing the enemy would be like throwing an egg on a rock. They would not have the slightest hope of victory. Only with changes could the world continue to survive and even more powerful people would appear within it. Chapter 847, The Gathering of Ancient Gods. Unconsciously, the two men had already arrived at the door of the main hall, and the large gate opened, revealing the scenery inside. A pale-faced youth wearing extravagant clothes was sitting on the main seat while the clan patriarch Jiaoxiu was respectfully standing by his side. Apart from them, there was no one else in the entire hall, even the elders of Moro clan were not present. Ashmo pays respects to Godfather. Ashmo, who sat on the main seat, did not reveal the slightest emotion and maintained a poker face. He only looked at Asura from above and did not stand up, only nodding. Asura carefully observed Ashmo with curiosity in his eyes. Although Ashmo had not properly greeted him with respect, there was no anger in his manner. Everything was out in the open, and there was a mutual understanding between the two of them. Upon seeing each other, they were like father and son who had not seen each other in a long time. No fiery battle erupted. I haven't descended to the mortal world for a long time, but I did not expect that you would change so much. When I created you at that time, you were the one who clung to me the most. Every time you felt sleepy, you would run to my room and lie by my side. As you grew older and bigger, you stopped being so close to me. Asura had a faint smile on his face while gesturing toward the sky. Even after he finished speaking, Ashmo, who sat on the master's seat, maintained the carefree attitude and did not move. Godfather, people can change, so what to speak of us gods who possess boundless life? Asura nodded, indicating his approval. A hint of confusion appeared on his face and he slowly asked, gods can also change. When I created you five, you were born as gods and possessed boundless life as well as authority. I handed over the entire Asura race to you to administer, so why did you do this? The topic changed, finally touching upon the crux of the matter. Li Yunmu, standing by the side, sized up the pale complexion of Ashmo. When he heard Asura talk about ordinary matters, he felt his blood run cold. Although Asura appeared to be a harmless person, he was still the cruelest. His cold-bloodedness was clearly seen from the fact that he had devoured the soul of his sister ancient god Lakshmi, but was reminiscing at that moment like a warm father. It was all a pretense. When Ashmo heard the last words, a smile appeared on his face. As the son of Asura, he naturally knew what kind of person was his father. The Asura who appeared to be a warm father was fake, but at that moment, he was showing the true him. Godfather feels that eternal life and majestic position is sufficient to satisfy us, he asked with a smile. In this world, isn't strength the most captivating thing? We are your sons, but we have been stuck as peak god. Ancient gods, master gods, and even true gods, we also want to see what is above the god realm. When Jiao Xiu, who stood at Ashmo's side, heard those words, his skin broke out in goosebumps. Although their ancestor had brazenly revealed his ancient god presence and declared war against Asura, he should not be so audacious as to say that he wanted to see what was above the god realm in front of Asura. Now what I see and feel are completely different from what gods see and feel, and I sense even more formidable power coursing through my body. At this moment, gods seem like ants to me, and I can kill them with a flick of a finger, Ashmo said without any worries. He raised his hands in the air, and an ancient god presence erupted from him, instantly enveloping the residents of the entire Moro clan. Every time you advance above the god realm, it's like covering the distance between heaven and earth. Gods are only moles who can be crushed casually in the eyes of ancient gods, while ancient gods are the same in the eyes of master gods. You said that every person possesses desire, which is why you all did such a thing. I can understand that, Asura said in an indifferent tone with his gaze fixed on Ashmo. If Godfather can understand it, then it is for the best. If... A smile appeared on Ashmo's face, but he was interrupted before he could finish. But Asura city is my domain. All the power of belief generated by the mortals here belongs to me. At that time, I divided it among the 5 of you because you were my sons. If I hadn't given you anything, would you dare to feel angry? But now, you 4 sneakily stole my power of belief as if I don't have any face. Asura declared in an ice-cold tone. He emitted a divine presence which was far more formidable than the one coming from Ashmo's body. Instantly, the latter was completely suppressed. For a moment, all the living beings in the clan residence could feel the ancient god presence filled with anger. Ashmo bore the brunt of it, and his face turned even paler, but he did not say anything. When Jiao Xiu standing by his side sensed the ancient god presence, his mind turned dizzy, and he felt his head spinning. After a few breaths, he returned to normal, but his back was covered in cold sweat. The difference between gods and ancient gods was only 1 step, but that 1 step seemed unattainable. Although he was a late-stage god, his mind became unstable under the suppression of ancient god presence, and he felt a sensation of vertigo which had never happened before. If he had been in a battle of life and death and faced that sense of dizziness, he would have died the next instant. It was simply terrifying. A thought appeared in Jiao Xiu's heart that perhaps Godfather was so formidable that even after joining hands, the 4 ancestors could still not be his enemy. Since you want to wait for your 3 brothers to come, I will wait here together with you. Let's see whether you newly advanced ancient gods can contend with me. Also, it's good to let the people of Asura city see who exactly is their heaven. Asura retrieved his ancient god presence, and a leather chair appeared out of nowhere. He lazily reclined on it while holding a cup of wine in his hand. Ashmo looked at Godfather's indifferent expression, and a helpless smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Even if the 4 of them had advanced to become ancient gods, they had no idea about Godfather's strength. But from the instant they began stealing the power of belief, there was no opportunity for them to turn around. Now, either the situation in Asura city would change or they would die. Jiao Xiu's back was covered in cold sweat, but he remained calmly standing behind Ashmo. After a long time, the 3 ancient god presences from the other 3 clans approached Moro clan's direction. Together with them were the elders and clan patriarchs of the 3 clans. When the large group arrived at the gate of Moro clan while emitting a faintly discernible divine presence from their bodies, the scared guards at the gate immediately knelt down on the ground without saying anything. The newcomers walked through the corridor, and the Moro clan's descendants who saw them became flustered. Their legs instantly went soft. Everyone became suspicious in their heart about what exactly was going on. The gods as well as ancient god ancestors of the 3 clans had arrived at Moro clan. Only City Lord Ashbai was missing. When the newcomers arrived in front of the main hall and looked at the back of the leather chair, their expressions somewhat tightened. The group was led by 3 youths wearing extravagant clothes with faces that displayed the vicissitudes of life. Chapter 848, Ancient gods perish. The three young men stepped inside the main hall and teetered around the leather chair to stop in front of Asura. Respectful greetings, Godfather, they said in unison. When Jiaoshu, whose whole back was covered in cold sweat, saw the ancestors of the three clans, a sense of security appeared in his heart. The shadow of fear after being suppressed by Asura's ancient god presence also faded away slightly. The three clan patriarchs noticed that Asura was no different from their ancestors, and all of them nodded in acknowledgement without the least bit of respect in their tone. In a place like Asura city where rules were considered supreme, such actions were extremely disgraceful. It could be seen that the three ancestors and their clans were of one mind. The four ancient gods were going to fight against Godfather, which should be enough to deal with him. Right, the three of you also came here, saving me the trouble to go looking for you one by one. Bringing so many gods with you, do you intend to make an all-out effort? Don't want to leave behind any path of retreat? You know that whoever rebels, I will kill them but won't attack others, so you brought the gods of all clans here. If they all die, then you will go together with the glory of the past. Asura looked at his three children while drinking his wine. One of them was a young lady with a curvy figure covered by a muslin dress. She slightly raised the corners of her mouth and said with a smile which might as well not be a smile, Godfather's words are wrong. If us four ancestors don't stay with the four clans, they will continue to decline. Moreover, you already want to assist a new power, so why would we care about so many things? After saying that, the young lady turned toward Li Yunmu, and her smile became even more malevolent while her eyes became like crescent moons. This should be our sixth brother. I heard that he was a branch family descendant before he was raised to this position by Godfather. It seems like he is quite capable. Has Godfather already begun to lose hope in direct descendants? Is that why he has begun to accept branch family descendants? When Asura, who was reclining on his leather chair, heard the young lady's words, he couldn't help smiling. A.T., so many years have passed, yet you are still the one who talks the most. But who would have thought that after advancing to ancient god, you would become so confident that you would dare to use your charming techniques on Godfather? Too audacious! Don't you know what kind of person your Godfather is? A.T. kept smiling, but she slightly retreated backwards. She had used a divine charming technique of Deva clan as soon as she opened her mouth. She did it because she believed that after advancing to ancient god level, she would be able to do something to Godfather, but against her expectations, nothing had changed. What shocked her the most, however, was that her sixth brother who was supposed to have advanced to god level only recently was also not influenced in the slightest. Those who could resist charming techniques were either much stronger than her or those with staunch and determined mind. The sixth brother had become a god just recently while she was an ancient god, so there was a difference of an entire realm between them. Yet the charming technique surprisingly had not effect whatsoever. A.T. could clearly see from that just how resolute her sixth brother was. It was something she should have expected though since he was a person chosen by Godfather. How could he be lacking with such a person having accepted him? Godfather, all four of us are already here, so we should discuss the division of power of belief in Asura city and even the division of power of belief of the entire Lanlu after the Great War. The ancestor of Doro clan with 6 arms and somewhat feminine features walked forward while speaking. He was smiling charmingly as if he already knew that the final conclusion would be the two sides being equally matched. Li Yunmu stood behind Asura and listened to everything. When he heard the confidence of the feminine ancestor of Doro clan, he felt somewhat suspicious in his heart. Even if the 4 ancestors were unable to guess Asura's true strength, they should know that Asura might not have been able to break through to Master God realm after tens of thousands of years, but he was still a peak existence among the ancient gods. The 4 of them had only recently stepped into ancient god realm, so where did their confidence come from? Asura's eyes focused on Doro clan's ancestor and he said in a dull tone, "You really are audacious. I, your godfather, still haven't died, but you already want to divide the power of belief of Asura city. When Doro clan's ancestor heard his words, he said, "Given that God Father created the five of us, we naturally don't want to go against you. What I mean is that since we four have advanced to ancient gods, we will need more power of belief to cultivate. Also, by some lucky fluke, God Father, you have already triggered the second battle between gods. We four ancient gods will assist your distinguished self in it. You should be clear about this." A crafty expression appeared on Ati's beautiful face, and she said with a deep smile. "Precisely, God Father, we have advanced to become ancient gods, so our influence on the second battle between gods will be larger. Your distinguished self should know that. Moreover, after we dominate Lanlu, you wouldn't hate to part with the power of belief of one region, would you?" Asura nodded but did not reply. The gods standing outside the main hall did not dare to make any sound. Their nerves were taut and their gazes were fixed on the leather chair. Truthfully speaking, they really hoped that their ancestors and God Father would not fight. If they could reach an agreement, it would naturally be for the best. Xiaoshu, who stood by Ashmo's side, was very nervous. The offer of four ancient gods' assistance for the power of belief of one city was extremely great. Once ancient god Lakshmi joined hands with the other five ancient gods to deal with Asura, addition of four ancient gods in their group will naturally boost their chances of victory. Your words are correct, but for now, the Great War hasn't started, and you four don't have the qualifications to stand in front of me and raise conditions, Asura said with a nod in their direction. God Father, the Great War has already begun, Doro clan's ancestor stated with a hint of smile on his face. Before his words could fade away, five ancient god presences appeared outside and surging divine might pressed upon Asura city. The hearts of all living beings in Asura city began to beat irregularly, and the thought of doomsday appeared in their minds. Now what does God Father think? Can we discuss the conditions? A cheerful look appeared on Ati's face, and her voice was full of excitement. Upon sending the ancient god presences enveloping all of Asura city, Asura immediately knew that they belonged to his brothers and sisters. They should have been discussing a scheme to attack him in Lakshmi city, but for an unknown to him reason, they appeared in the vicinity of Asura city. Such an unnatural event was certainly the cause of his unfilial children. The lot of you are really ferocious. In order to survive, you surprisingly relied on other ancient gods. The smile gradually disappeared from Asura's face, and his voice turned calm like a river. It held no anger nor happiness. Doro clan's ancestor felt that they had a chance of winning and bluntly asked, "How do you choose, God Father?" Asura did not reply. He stood up from his leather chair and slightly waved a hand toward the other party. Doro clan's ancestor's head separated from his body while still maintaining a smile. "I choose the deaths of all of you. This senior has never done anything in which I wasn't confident in succeeding. This battle of gods was incited by me, so I naturally have the assurance of winning. As for you all recently advanced ancient gods, I don't care about you." Chapter 849, Instant Kill. The head of Doro clan's ancestor fell down with his words. A slight smile remained on his face while his body retained its original position, but the ancient god presence within his body gradually disappeared. The speed at which Asura killed him was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, the head of an ancient god fell on the ground and he died. The other three ancestors looked at Asura with a hint of fear on their faces. From the instant they began stealing the power of belief to become ancient gods, it was not like the three of them had not done any preparations. The main reason why they dared to openly reveal their ancient god presence was because their preparations were complete. After Asura descended from the divine palace and issued the two missions, after which ancient god Lakshmi attracted the attention of the five ancient gods, the three of them got ready to ally with others to deal with Asura. The four ancestors had secretly dispatched people to Lakshmi city to negotiate. That was all in preparation for the day when they would lay their cards in front of Asura. Their plan set out that one of them would first try to get an idea of Asura's strength. After that, the five other ancient gods would attack, and it would mean that all the ancient gods of Lanlu would be trying to kill Asura, who was all alone. There was no doubt that they would win in such a situation. From the beginning, the four ancestors had never thought of remaining under Asura. They were only negotiating to buy time. But what everyone had not expected was that even the descent of the five ancient gods would not be able to stop Asura from attacking and even taking out the ancestor of Doro clan before anyone could understand what happened. It was all done with a single wave of the hand. Asura looked at everyone's reaction, and a smile appeared on his face. He turned toward the outside and said in a soft voice, "I'm dealing with my family matters right now, so if you want to meddle, I will have you stay here. You should better leave and have a good rest before the main battle." After he said that, the ancient god presences outside Asura city gradually disappeared. The expressions of the three ancestors changed. They remained calm, but there was vigilance in their eyes. A moment ago, they could not clearly see how the ancestor of Doro clan had died, which made it clear that they had been underestimating Asura's strength. Li Yunmu looked at Asura, his expression completely serene, but he felt even more apprehensive in his heart. Just a moment ago, when Asura had waved his hand, none of the four ancestors could see what exactly happened, but Li Yunmu he saw it clearly. Asura had stood up and seemed to wave his hand toward the other party, but the truth was that at that instant, his 5 fingers turned into a blur and opened a crack in space. His energy entered it and passed through the neck of Doro clan's elder like a blade, which resulted in his instant death. There wasn't the least bit of margin for rebelling. From the time Asura attacked, Li Yunmu began to compare who was stronger and who was weaker between them. If he did not use the demonic energy, he would not be an enemy of Asura. But as soon as he used the demonic energy, Asura would be crushed. Even if he had already grasped the laws and walked above them, even if he possessed the cultivation of a quasi-master god, nothing would be useful to him. Now do you understand? Even if you three are ancient gods, you aren't much different from gods in front of me. If I wanted to kill, I could do it without any worries. I created you, gave you the cultivation base of gods and a respectable position, but I can take everything back whenever I want. When Asura looked at the 3 ancestors standing in front of him, his lips curled into a smile, but it was a terrifying sight rather than a calming one. Xiaoxiu, who stood by Ashmo's side, felt goosebumps all over his body. He did not dare to believe that the ancestor of Doro clan had been killed so easily and efficiently. They were both ancient gods, so why was the difference between them so great? Godfather created us, but you won't permit us to progress, so why did you even create us? In such a situation, it is only natural that we would rebel, even if your distinguished self is powerful and can kill us in one move. Despite that, we must move forward. There was no emotion on Ati's face. She understood Asura's strength and that she had no hope. The 5 ancient gods with whom they had previously allied had been scared into retreat with one sentence, which resulted in the downfall of their plans. But just like she said, even if they knew that they were going to die, the 3 of them had to advance forward. After speaking, Ati's expression turned grave. She revealed her snow-white hands and began to wave them, releasing a faint light in the surroundings which spread in every direction like fireflies at night. The entire sky turned dark. Ashmo sitting on the master's seat looked at Ati's illusion, and his expression hardened. He moved and formed 2 clones. The 3 Ashmos were all emitting ancient god presence, and their eyes shone with golden light in the darkness of the illusion. Asura did not move, and upon noticing that, Rahu clan's ancestor twisted his neck and began to wave his thick arms. They grew in size and rose towards the sky. The 3 ancestors used their trump cards toward Asura right from the start. Moro clan's ancestor Ashmo's bloodline ability allowed him to divide himself into 2 clones with equivalent strength. Even when the 5 ancient gods rushed to attack Asura, he remained calm. He looked at the 3 ancestors attacking him in darkness, and the smile on his face became even more profound. He extended his left hand, and 5 rays of energy shot from his fingers. They entered a spatial crack, and the heads of the 3 ancestors rolled down. With bodies destroyed and their souls gone, the three ancient gods died just like that. The main hall returned to normal and Jiaoxiu, who had stood by the main seat, looked at the four headless corpses. His complexion turned deathly pale and cold sweat rolled down his back. He retreated a few steps in horror. When the ancestors died, the clan patriarchs outside the main hall were the first to sense it. They lost all hope and knelt down on the ground. After them, the descendants of the four clans sensed that something was lacking in their bloodline. They felt suffocated in their chests and paralyzed. Many of them fell to the ground and began to weep bitterly. In an instant, the entire Asura city was suppressed. Asura expressionlessly looked at the four headless corpses. After a long time, when the three clan patriarchs outside main hall and Jiaoxiu began to panic in fear, he calmly said, "Let's go." Li Yunmu followed behind Asura out of the main hall. Before leaving, he gave one last complicated look to the four corpses. From the beginning, such an end was foreordained. How could four newly advanced ancient gods fight against Asura, who was only one step away from becoming a master god? What was more, the four ancient gods were Asura's children and possessed different bloodline abilities he had given him. The instant the four ancestors died, however, Li Yunmu had a feeling of déjà vu. He was reminded of when he saw Chenqiu massacring the mortals of Lakshmi city. It was similar disparity in strength and a similar wish to succeed on the side of the murderer. Mortals wanted to survive, while the four ancestors wanted to advance. There was a heaven above their heads which had to be destroyed. If it was not destroyed, it would continue to rot until was left of it. While leaving the Moro clan's mansion, Asura and Li Yunmu encountered many descendants who had sensed the death of their ancestor through bloodline and were in grief. All of them were absent-mindedly kneeling without paying much attention to etiquette. After leaving the clan residence, the two people walked down the road with no soul in sight. Neither of them noticed it as they were both lost in their own thoughts. Chapter 850, The Structure of Asura City Overturned. Do you think that I am excessively cold-blooded? Asura stood up and walked to stand shoulder to shoulder with Li Yunmu. Li Yunmu snapped back to reality, flabbergasted in his heart over why Asura was asking this type of question. Could he not decide himself whether he was cold-blooded or not? Those siblings joined hands to resist, so Godfather killing them is an ordinary matter. One must have an understanding of oneself to ensure their survival in this world. If one doesn't have a clear idea of what they're capable, they will find it difficult to avoid death. Those siblings of mine didn't have a good grasp of their own abilities, so they died. They should have been clear about what they were trying to do and what was their position. Exceeding that isn't good, Li Yunmu said with a calm expression. Asura sneered after hearing that and asked with a calm smile, "So you do understand it? But if you understand this, why did you fight against Ming Wang and rush to the city lord's mansion to find a chance at living? At that time, if I hadn't raised your strength to god level and given you the position of ancestor, you would have died for sure." Having an understanding of oneself does not mean that one should not gamble. As long as there's a chance at surviving, I will naturally stake my all for advancement. Otherwise, there's no need to die. Well said. Old Sixth, you are an intelligent person and have reached the powerful position today from nothing. You should know that as long as you aren't disloyal, you can live eternally in Asura city with only me standing above you. Although the five ancient gods have been forced into retreat by me, the battle between us will still continue. After saying that, Asura paused for a moment before continuing. After experiencing this battle, the other ancient gods will know that my strength is at the peak while they are injured. But I don't have full certainty that I'll win against the five of them and ancient god Lakshmi. Li Yunmu nodded, feeling overjoyed in his heart. Within one day, the situation in Asura city underwent an enormous change. Originally, the city lord's mansion and the four great clans controlled Asura city, but the four ancestors rebelled and died, so the four great clans will naturally fall out of favor. The city lord Ashbai had also participated in stealing the power of belief, but he hadn't used it to break through into ancient god realm. This meant that Asura would not kill him, but he would probably be deprived of his authority. After experiencing this matter, Asura definitely would not entrust the responsibility of the entire city to one person. In the future, Chenchu and Ashbai would be the most majestic people in Asura city, representing the two factions of direct descendants and branch family descendants who would divide the authority of Asura city evenly among themselves. With the control of half of Asura city under him, Li Yunmyo could provoke the battle between gods using his authority and force the gods of Lanlu to fight among themselves. Without them to inconvenience him, he could then easily run to the divine palace and search for the treasure he needed. "What does Godfather want me to do?" Li Yunmyo asked while feigning a feverish expression. Asura took note of his excitement and said with a smile, "Naturally, I want you and Ashbai to jointly manage Asura city. One of you will represent the direct descendants while the other will represent branch family descendants. The two of you will then perfectly counter each other. Naturally, the counter I speak of means positive competition. Before the 5 ancient gods come out, the battle of gods will be fought under your command." "Yes, Godfather," Li Yunmyo said respectfully. Asura nodded, and his figure quickly faded out of vision. Li Yunmyo turned around and proceeded toward the Colosseum in the middle city. When he had gone to the city lord's mansion, Brunhilde and the 2 fighters of the Colosseum recruited by him stayed to fight for him in the Colosseum. Since Asura had passed him half the authority of Asura city, he had to do something with it, or he would be letting himself down. Li Yunmyo walked to the entrance of the Colosseum, and the guards resting on the ground stood up with a jump. "Our respectful greetings, God," they stammered out. Without paying any attention to them, Li Yunmyo went to the 4-story building. After his figure disappeared within it, the guards heaved a sigh of relief and wiped the sweat off their foreheads. "Fortunately, he didn't find us to settle the debts." In a room within the 4-story building, Brunhilde was eating a fruit and watching the 2 fighters whom they had recruited with interest. "Tell me, will we be executed or not? That Lord God has been gone for so long and has yet to return. Do you think that he has already? Hey, you should have also sensed that formidable presence just now." Old Bastard with his robust stature swayed the iron hammer in his hand while speaking with a frown. Rat, who had been standing by his side, did not reply and just rolled his eyes. He continued leaning against the wall with a calm expression. "Hey, Rat, I'm speaking to you. Why aren't you replying? Tell me, should we run away?" "Right, girl, you should also run away with us. That Lord God went against the 4 great clans, so I fear that if we don't run right now, we won't get another chance." A hint of panic appeared in the eyes of Old Bastard when he spoke about the 4 great clans. Up until then, he couldn't understand where he had gotten the courage to throw the 3 young masters onto the arena. If he was caught, he would definitely be flayed. When he thought about that, he picked up the hammer and began to pull Rat's hand. Rat threw off Old Bastard's hand and said with shock, Hey, wait a minute. How can your brain be so small compared to your strength? You need to stop now. If Lord God wasn't going to return, how could this girl sit here so calmly? Old Bastard, stop it and calmly wait for Lord God to return." Rat looked at Brunhilde sitting on the chair and his eyes narrowed like those of a rat. Brunhilde was smiling while looking at the 2 people with completely different behavior. Their antics made her want to laugh more and more. She had lived like a princess from childhood, so whoever she met would always be respectful toward her. Who would dare to act in this manner in front of her? It was really interesting. "Who told you that I am done for?" At this time, a calm man entered the room. His voice brought excitement to the faces of Rat and Old Bastard. Finally, the person they had been waiting for had arrived. Both of them had come to the Colosseum for exactly that moment, when they would be valued by some lord of the upper city and be able to walk out of the lower city. The 2 men turned toward Li Yunmyo and instantly knelt down on the ground before respectfully saying, "Respectful greetings, Lord." Li Yunmyo walked to Brunhilde's side, then looked at the 2 of them and said with an earnest expression, "Stand up, it seems like the 2 of you have grown anxious while waiting. You finished your previous mission perfectly though, so I am very satisfied. What rewards do you want now? Old bastard slightly creased his eyebrows before shifting his gaze to Rat. When Rat heard what Li Yunmu said, he became excited and looked over at him with his rat-like eyes. Can we really demand anything we want? Lord would not take back his words, right? He probed. Speak, whatever reward you want, if I can make it a reality, I will definitely not go back on my word.